Okay, so hi guys. I guess you're probably wondering why we're posting in the middle of the week, and why our slides for this week look a little different. Well, that's because this week it's National Reconciliation Week. It kicks off on the 27th of June every year, and I just thought that it would be nice for us to acknowledge that this is a very important time for all of us, and to also learn a bit about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and what we can do about that in a clinical context. So before we begin, um, yep, so it's National Reconciliation Week this week. And before we begin, I think it would be pretty important for us to learn how to acknowledge our country. So for me, because I'm staying on campus, my the country that I'm staying on would be that of the Kulin Nation. So to acknowledge the country that this is being filmed on, I say, I wish to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land we are gathered here today. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. So that was how you acknowledge your country. Um, Anyone can acknowledge their country, and they should. So today, actually, I think it's kind of important for us all to learn more about who or which particular tribe is the traditional custodian of the country that we might live or work on. So there is a very informative map by the AIATSIS. It kind of shows the different regions in the whole of Australia, and there's also a link there that you guys can visit in the PowerPoint slide that shows you how to the proper way in which you would acknowledge your country. So just a short disclaimer is that we would normally say the and then you insert the language group of the people of the something nation, right? In an acknowledgement of country, but because according to the Monash website, there's no registered Aboriginal party on the Clayton campus where my apartment is, and thus I can only acknowledge the nation that I'm on, but not the specific group that owns the nation. So I hope that's fine. I hope that anyone who's watching who is of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander origin um, isn't put off by that. So yeah, apologies for that. So now, what are we going to talk about today? Because today kicks off a very important week in Australia's national sort of calendar. So first, I think it's worthwhile to talk about the art, why our slides have a different look for today. We're also going to talk about what National Reconciliation Week is, and a brief history of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia and what has been happening to them over the past over the past century, and also the clinical application of all of the stuff that we're learning today. Okay, so this painting that we're using here today in our slides, it's called The Cycle of Knowledge. It was painted in the year 2000 by Mandy Nicholson of the Wurundjeri William tribe, which, fun fact, the Wurundjeri language is one of the 5 language groups that make up the Kulin Nation, which is where Monash Uni, or at least the Clayton campus, is situated. So that's very cool. It is very relevant to us, and it also represents the flow of knowledge. So so according to the artist, the top symbolizes the symbols on the top represent the rain, the diamonds represent knowledge flowing through the Yarra River, and the water ribbons represent the Yarra. So as you might have been able to tell, the Wurundjeri William tribe is near or very close to the Yarra River, and that's why there are so many references to the Yarra River. You will learn later on in the slide, and I hope you guys all have also gotten this from your tutorials in week 5, that the land and the sort of natural landscape that the people are living on are very, very important to people of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander origin, and they play a lot in their identity, their culture, and their belief systems. So yeah, it's very, very cool stuff, and it's also kind of pertinent because this PSP aims to perpetuate the same cycle of knowledge, if we teach you this stuff, we hope that you guys can go on to educate your friends, your family, start conversations with people, and really get it out there that this is a part of history that we cannot forget. This is a part of history that belongs to all of us here. And yeah, it's very important. So next up, what exactly is National Reconciliation Week? So National Reconciliation Week is a week that is dedicated to remembering our shared history and learning from our mistakes. So you guys probably all already know that the history of treatment of people of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander origin is not exactly a history that I think we're very proud of. Okay, it's not a history full of it's not a very fun history, it's not a very fair history. But the thing is that we have to acknowledge that the only way to move forward, to move past this history, is to move together, okay? Because we can't have any progress if we don't include everyone in that ideal of progress. So enough on that. National Reconciliation Week falls between 27th of May and also the 3rd of June. So this is today and next week. So these dates commemorate two significant milestones in the reconciliation journey, the anniversaries of the successful 1967 referendum and the High Court Mabo decision. So what exactly are those dates what exactly do those dates mean? So on 27th of May, sorry, that's just my friend. So on the 27th of May, the Australian referendum it took place, and the people of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander origin were now counted in the national census. So if you think about it, this is really a turning point in the fight for equal rights. But this is not the end, because including people in the census, it literally just kind of means I acknowledge that these are people, which is I mean, it's completely mind-blowing to me, because how could you not acknowledge the people on whose land that you literally just came on, and like you just planted yourself on them? How do you not acknowledge that they are part of the national population? So I think that's completely crazy, and you're gonna see me get so get very uncomposed throughout this whole thing, because some of this stuff is just woo, I want to throw stuff. Okay, and then on the 3rd of June in 1992, this was the High Court Mabo decision, which recognized people of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander origin as the traditional custodians of the land for the first time. So prior to this, what was said in legal documents and in historical literature about Australia was that nobody owned the land before Christopher Columbus came and colonized Australia, which as you guys know, that's just not the truth. That's just really not the truth. So these are the dates that mark the start and end of National Reconciliation Week. But I think it's important to know that just because National Reconciliation Week only happens for a week doesn't mean that the changes that we talk about in this mini PSP shouldn't be practiced in your daily life. That, you know, all the things that we're learning about, all the stories and the struggles that we're hearing about shouldn't be something that you take on and as part of a change mindset for the rest of your lives and for the rest of your clinical practice. So now I also want you guys to think about how recently these first steps to equality took place. Like the High Court Mabo decision, by the way, is 1990 freaking two. That's just like six years before I was born. I am not an old person, which is, yeah, it's crazy. Oh my god. Okay, so what does reconciliation mean? So according to the Reconciliation Australia site, which is really the ultimate resource on Reconciliation Week, which I really, really recommend you guys check out over the course of this weekend, you know, whenever else you guys have the time to check it out. Reconciliation is an ongoing journey that reminds us that while generations of Australians have fought hard for meaningful change, future gains are likely to take just as much, if not more, effort. Okay, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. This is not something that's going to happen just because a few people are making change, and therefore you think, you know, If they're doing something about it, then there's nothing that I need to do, or there's nothing that I can do. That is wrong, because there is something that every one of us can do, even if it's just educating your friends, even if it's just clicking on a link and learning about why all of this is really important. So yeah, and then they go on to say that in a just, equitable, and reconciled Australia, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children will have the same life chances and choices as non-Indigenous children, and the length and quality of a person's life will not be determined by their racial background. So yeah, that really echoes the Martin Luther King speech, "I Have a Dream," which was made a long time ago. And the fact that this still has to be said now for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, yeah, it's kind of crazy. So reconciliation, really something that all of us have to work to, all of us can work to. So what can we do over Reconciliation Week? We should basically educate ourselves. There's no time like the present to learn about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander matters. And there's a link right there. It takes you to the Reconciliation Week website by Reconciliation Australia. And there are really so many links and so many resources that you guys can just thumb through. It's really great. And another thing that you can do is acknowledge the Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander land that you're living on. So just as I did at the start of this presentation, probably in a really clunky manner, I'm so sorry. I'm not used to organizing things where I have to say that, because that's usually the job of the people that are organizing events, and I don't have a lot of experience organizing events. But that is a thing that you're going to hear a lot of lecturers do, a lot of event organizers do, but it's not just for them, it can be for you guys too. And if you just want to pop a quick Instagram story, say, this is where I live, this is the people on whose land I am living, and maybe pop in some artwork by the people of that same land, just like how I popped in the artwork by the Wurundjeri tribe, part of the Kulin Nations. You guys could do that too, I think it's just something that would be remiss if we didn't do that today. So now, this is the part where everything gets really, really bad. And this is gonna get so upsetting real quick. Like, you have no idea. Or maybe you do, because we did have this lecture in week 5. So, why is it so important to reconcile? Why is it so important to say that this is a part of history that we will never, ever repeat ever again? Because of this long-standing history of structural violence that goes from displacement to segregation to forced assimilation to structural discrimination that continues today. Okay, it's important to note that this hasn't ended yet, and it is not going to end unless all of us decide to do something about it. So yeah, once again, buckle up. This is going to get really upsetting really quick. Okay, so first up, displacement. So in 1770, Cook colonized Australia. So this was based on the doctrine of discovery, which said that colonization is completely within reason if the people there are not Christian and are not civilized by Western standards, which, I'm sorry, that's complete horse manure to me, so fuck you, Cook. And therefore no treaty was signed when Cook colonized Australia. In essence, that means that that this was not a civil agreement. This was just a forceful taking over of land that happened just because Cook decided that, by cultural, what is it called? Ethnocentrism, I think. Yeah, by cultural blindness and ethnocentrism, the people that were the original traditional custodians of the Australian continent were not deserving of ownership of the land, and therefore he just kind of came in and took it. So fuck that. And therefore the Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander people were displaced from their land, which resulted in widespread disease. There are so many diseases that came about just because of colonization. So there was tuberculosis, pelvic inflammatory disease, and this is especially upsetting to read about, because basically it happened because of sexual violence committed by the colonists, and it resulted in infertility, and then it resulted in the mass reduction in population of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, which then resulted in them being viewed as like inferior, and that they couldn't they weren't the people didn't have good like survivability, that kind of thing, all because of sexual violence, really, causing mortality, causing infertility in the women, in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women. So yeah, once again, say it with me, fuck that. And also because of the naive immune systems of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So all of these diseases that the colonists were bringing onto the land were not originally part of the kind of healthcare landscape of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people at that time. They didn't have any of the antibodies to fight any of these diseases. So you can imagine how devastating that must have been. The kind of impact that had on the people who were literally just trying to do their thing on their own freaking land. So this also resulted in the loss of resources, as land was taken from the people. Other things like, sorry, I just have to page through this because I should have included it. So there was land that was taken from them, their shelter, and also their spiritual resources. They weren't even allowed to practice their own religions, their own beliefs, which, once again, say it with me, fuck that. Yeah, so all of this was taken from them. There was also widespread violence. There are maps. There is the Murder Cover-Up Project, which I haven't included here. I should, and it will be in the, I think it will be in the updated slides. But it basically shows a map of the massacres that the colonists inflicted upon the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, which, very upsetting, very upsetting. And also, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were also plied with alcohol and addictive substances just to kind of extend the control of the colonists. So yeah, if you're wondering why, there is kind of this stereotype, this very negative and destructive stereotype that alcohol abuse, substance abuse is endemic in the populations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's because of this very first step here, where they were all plied with alcohol and addictive substances, and that was kind of a way to control them. Okay, very much like how, because I'm Singaporean Chinese, so I remember that somebody told us that British colonists coming to Singapore gave the Chinese people a lot of opium, set up a lot of opium dens so that the Chinese people, the Chinese laborers, would become more subservient to them. So this is kind of the same thing. Both are equally fucked up, by the way. I'm not trying to insert my own narrative in here, by the way. Both are equally fucked up. So yeah, that's great. This is really great stuff. Okay. And then the next step would be segregation. So in 1837 to 1937, because of all the aforementioned reasons beforehand, the indigenous people were dying out, and the colonial government thought this was due to inferior genetics. What the fuck? So it's kind of like that meme, which I didn't put in here. I almost did, but I thought, you know, that's kind of disrespectful. But where it's that meme where the guy takes the gun and he shoots this other person, and he's like, and then he turns around and he's like, why would you do that? You know, it's kind of like that. He shoots, you know, they kind of shoot all this stupid colonial diseases at the people. The people die out, and they're like, oh, why are the people dying out? You tell me. So this was the impetus for them to put in, for the colonial government to put in protective measures to smooth the dying pillow. Which is also very shitty. So basically, by smoothing the dying pillow, as a result, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were segregated and forced into convents / reservations / missions. Basically, these large plots of land where the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were put under total control of the colonial higher-ups at that time, and this resulted in a loss of freedom, names, property, custody of children, religion, sovereignty, and culture. Like basically, it was kind of like a brainwashing, reprogramming kind of thing, which is just horrifying to imagine. Um, and then we have forced assimilation. So in 1937, the Premier's Conference on Aboriginal Welfare took place, and this is where the term "breeding out the black" came in. So this is when assimilation became a thing. People decided that if they forcibly um, if the colonists forcibly produced children with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and produced half mixed race children, that eventually they could dilute they could dilute the blood of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, which will eventually lead to a fully white people population, which in their eyes was ideal. But remember that, remember that 1937 is so close to when Hitler's rise took place. In fact, I think that he, prior, ex-history student here, but I think stuff started going down in Nazi Germany in 1936. So eugenics was on the rise at this point in time. Um, and if you think about it, really the concept of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kind of like belonging to that group, being based on appearance, is kind of based in this concept of eugenics, and based on the concept of your skin color, breeding out the black, that sort of thing. And this is also when assimilation became a thing. Assimilation sounds like a good word. It's not a good word. Just remember that throughout this whole story, anytime I say something that sounds like a good word, it's usually not a good word. Really not a good word. So basically, from 1937 to around the 1960s, the doctrine of assimilation was implemented. So children were systematically taken from their parents to erase their culture and heritage, and they kind of did this with the excuse that their parents were being neglectful, which is, again, total horse manure, because I don't think anyone should have the right to remove children from their parents. And this resulted in the stolen generation. um yeah, you just kind of think of an entire generation of children completely robbed of their culture and their heritage, and their spirituality, um which is just totally fucked up to me. So in 1962, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were finally given the right to vote. In 1967, it's not down here because I mentioned it up top already, but that was the referendum when they were made part of the national census. And in 1969, all states repealed the legislation allowing for the removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children under the guise of protection. Okay, so we're taking a few steps forward here, but the story doesn't end here. It's important to know that it continues to suck, basically. So after the 1960s, people realized that there was a health gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, as they say in the literature. Okay. However, many assume that this was due to laziness, a lack of education, or some other form of moral failing on their part. When in actual fact, if you trace the history from the 1770s all the way to now, that was really because of just centuries of systematic oppression, just the colonial government trying to doing whatever they can to keep the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people down. It's important to remember that whenever you see, if you see somebody that you think, oh, hey, the stereotype isn't so wrong after all, remember that you're seeing somebody who is under the effect of hundreds of years of systematic oppression that have led them to the point that they are at that in the current situation. And it's not just because of some kind of moral failing, you know. So yeah, think before you apply stereotypes to people, basically. So this perpetuates a cycle of structural violence against the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So when you have stereotypes like that, as you see here, it leads to prejudice. It leads to prejudices, okay? So it leads to people having the wrong idea and treating people according to the incorrect stereotypes that they have. And then this leads to discrimination. So rather than, so prejudice basically just means, I think that this person is kind of different, you know, or I will, before I talk to this person, I will have this idea in their heads, that they are like this. Discrimination, on the other hand, takes that a step further by saying that because they're like this, it's fine if I'm not so nice, you know, it's fine if I say mean things to them. It's fine if I treat them as less than, you know, less deserving than, let's say, another customer or another friend, that kind of thing. So when discrimination is combined with power, which, be warned, as a medical student and as doctors, we have a lot of power. Okay, people want to listen to the things that we say. So with if we have discrimination and power, that's when, um, we're really enabled to, turn discrimination into oppression. So um, that's when there are real political and social consequences, of the wrong and really messed up ideas that we have in our heads on other people. That's when those ideas have legs, and that's when those legs can just kick other people in the nuts and, you know, basically kick people when they're down, that sort of thing. It's a lot of leg analogies for me. um, and lastly, that leads to internalized oppression, which I think is the saddest, because, oftentimes, if you treat somebody a certain way, if you treat someone like a criminal, they will think, yeah, okay, this means that I am a criminal, and this means that I am less than, um, just less than everyone else, which I think is the saddest part, because nobody deserves to feel that way. Just that's just the facts. Nobody deserves to feel that way, and nobody deserves to be made to feel that way. So when internalized depression kicks in, that's when people, you know, that's when you have mental health getting damaged, repeatedly, and that's when, you know, if somebody has poor mental health, how do you think they're gonna try hard and get a good education? They can't, you know, because they have all these things going on in the back of their mind, saying people are telling me this, people are treating me like this, and that's when they can't, you know, get a good education. um, and that's when they seem to uphold the stereotypes, but really, once again, say it with me, stereotypes are wrong. Stereotypes are the result of systematic oppression. Okay, they're not a moral failing on the individual's part. Okay, yeah, this is very upsetting. This is very upsetting for me. So now, um, the silver lining, however, is, that there is something that we can do as doctors. Okay, we can take concrete steps to make, um, to make uh, to move Australia forward as a country together. Okay, so understand that you cannot homogenize Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and that's one of the reasons why using ATSI, to refer to them is highly discouraged, because not only does it kind of smash everyone together in an acronym, but kind of, you know, it's kind of got the implication that it's too much trouble to say Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and it's, you know, it's too much trouble to refer to them by their proper name, um, because for me, Singaporean, it's a long word, but if somebody refer to me, verbally by some kind of shortened name, um, I wouldn't feel very good about that. Why can't you just say, you know, Singaporean? Why can't you just say Australian? And just like that, why can't you just say Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander? Um, so Indigenous is also not as specific as it should be, and it's also, in this sense, it's less preferred. Um, so this may not be an opinion that's upheld that's upheld by everybody, who is of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander origin, but, it's a safe guideline to follow. Again, if you're not sure, literally just ask. That's the thing. Literally just ask. Get to know the people, around you who are of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander origin. Um, get to know their opinions on things, um, and, you know, just get to know them as people. That's the most important part, I think. um, and yeah, don't be afraid to ask. If I feel like if it comes from a good place, you know, people ask me things about me being Chinese. If it comes from a good place, then I see no reason that you should be scared to ask something. Okay. um, And last but not least, there are, sorry, this is not the last slide. And also there are approximately 290 to 363 Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander languages spoken in Australia and its surrounding islands. So that is such a mind-blowingly diverse group of people. As you can see from the map, like I can't even show you you can't even read the text because there are just so many different language groups. And so there is no way that these people are all the same, you know. If yeah, there's no way all these people are the same, so you can't homogenize Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. All experiences are unique. Okay, and so what else can we do apart from acknowledging that everyone is different? So we can create cultural safety in the workplace. So what is cultural safety exactly? It's enabling a patient to feel safe by letting them know that you are not going to use their culture as an excuse to treat them poorly, as has been the case historically. Okay, bear in mind that historically, every time somebody did something horrible, or every time a government did something horrible to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, it was with the justification that their culture was in some way not white enough, or not conventionally accepted enough, or not, whatever enough. It was using the basis of their culture being different. So creating cultural safety is really just to assure people that as medical professionals, we are not going to say, we are not going to say, because your culture is like that, it gives me the right to treat you a certain way that is less than somebody else who has a different culture. So how can we create cultural safety exactly? We can take the time to, sorry, that's the second part. We can display art by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists to show solidarity. And bear in mind that this does not mean just kind of like copying and pasting the nicest thing you find on Google Images. You actually should take the time to acknowledge the artists, take time to credit them, and take time to include, to include kind of, one of those art post-it thingies on the painting that tell you what the painting means and why it's important. Because when you display artwork by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, you are saying that they are seen, they are acknowledged, and you want to show off, the most beautiful parts of the culture, because you think that it's worthwhile putting that up for other people to see. And it's a very strong sign of solidarity, which I think all of us should, as medical professionals, be involved in solidarity. So again, another thing we can do is take the time to practice yawning. So yawning basically is asking a patient about their country, their mob, where they grew up, because land is of great significance to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I'll tell you guys more about this later on. Another thing we can do is to provide training in Indigenous health for all members of staff. Again, Indigenous is not the ideal word to use here, but because it's the word that's used in your modules and your like training thingies, that's the word I'm using here. So have at least one Indigenous health worker on the team. That is very important. And also engage with your patient's family and community to improve follow-up outcomes. So and I can't speak for everyone once again, but we were told that for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, engaging with the family and the community is so important, because their culture is very tight knit. It's very communal. Everybody kind of like really sticks together as a tight-knit family, as a tight-knit community. So it's very important that we acknowledge that, we don't just value you, we value the community that you come from, okay? And so more on yawning. So what is yawning? Yawning is something that we can do in a clinical setting, and it consists of social yawning, diagnostic yawning, management yawning, and what this means, basically, you can see from this really great flowchart right here. Social yawning is showing an interest in the patient. Okay, so this is completely outside of your WWQQAAB. This is outside your, do you have a history of diabetes? You have how are your parents' medical conditions, that kind of thing. This is taken completely outside of this clinical model that we think is convenient and the ideal formula. Okay, this shows that we value them as people, not just as objects to kind of like look at them, poke at them with a little stethoscope, but as people that we want to help, as people whose spirits we also care about, um, and you know, as people who we want to make feel as safe as possible in our I hope clinically competent hands. So this is finding common ground, developing a relationship, and having a two-way exchange, sharing life experiences. So the patient might tell you where they come from, and you can say, you know, I grew up here, my family's here, we moved here, this is where I grew up. Oh, you know, I know about where you grew up. I know that there's some great parks there, there's great fishing, the beach, something like that, you know. It's really about finding common ground on a very personal level. So then there comes the diagnostic yarn, and this is your traditional history taking, but with a more culturally competent spin. So in this case, you should hear the patient's health story rather than kind of bombarding them with questions. You use open-ended sentences, allow for silences, because you guys might have been taught, or maybe not, that in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, um, they have a very non-verbal way of expressing themselves. They have a very high context culture, so you have to pay attention not just to the words that you're saying, but to your body language, also to your gesturing, how you set up the room. You know, is it overly kind of cold, or is it too direct and like in your face, that sort of thing. You guys are going to learn more of that in year 2. And hopefully at the end of year 1 also. So I won't go too deep into that, but basically you have to pay attention to silences and let the patient tell you what they need to tell you, okay? Because if you think about it, your patient knows that they have a problem. They're not coming in because they're like, because they're not aware they have a problem. They know that something is wrong in their knee, and that's why it hurts, or something like that. They know that there's something wrong with their breathing because maybe they suddenly wake up gasping for air. Okay, they know that something is wrong. So if you let the patient tell you, if you let the patient guide the diagnostic yarn, then that can really encourage the patient to tell you what is important, and it can also allow you to garner a lot of important information. Okay, so then lastly, there's the management yarn, which provides direct, straight up health information. You can use stories and metaphors to explain health conditions and build motivation. Again, one thing to really take note in this part is that not everyone is going to speak in such a metaphorical story kind of language, and that you really have to pay attention to how they choose to guide the diagnostic yarn, so that you can kind of you can kind of learn what kind of language speaks to them, what kind of words they are going to value more than others, and then you can decide how to deliver your information. Okay, and I feel like this shouldn't have to be drilled home so hard, because it should be common sense, but you have to develop a shared or agreed plan for care. Okay, in all contexts, developing a care plan should be something that's a collaborative effort, not just the doctor saying, this is what we're gonna do. Okay. So if you guys want to see where I got this diagram from, which is really, really crazy, it's really good, and it's everything that you really need to know about yarning. You should go to this paper. I know that we're a bit hesitant to read papers, you know, this late at night, but I think it's important because it talks about a lot about yarning from a clinical point of view. Okay. And to conclude, the past is important because it continues to affect the present. That's why National Reconciliation Week is so important to us, okay? There is nothing we can do to change the present, but we can there is nothing we can do to change the past, but we can control what we do in the present. We can control how we choose to treat other people, okay? Whether you treat them as preconceived notions or as human beings that deserve respect, that deserve compassion, that deserve solidarity. Okay? Progress means nothing. Progress means nothing unless it includes everyone. That is something that we have to really bear in mind at all times, that moving forward means nothing unless it includes everyone. Okay? And I have some quotes to close up for you guys. So Jackie Huggins, she's the co-chair of the National Congress of Australia's First Peoples. She says the true essence of reconciliation is more than making friends with non-Indigenous people. Our motto our motto is a united Australia, one that respects the land and the heritage of its Indigenous peoples and provides justice and equality for all. Okay. So this is yeah, this really just captures why it's so important to celebrate and to commemorate Reconciliation Week, because we have to strive for a united Australia, bear in mind respect for the land and heritage of its peoples, and strive towards justice and equality for all. Mm-hmm. And so the next quote, it's my personal favorite quote because it's by this one doctor. He's really involved in global health, um, not related to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander matters. He's not even like American. Sorry, he's not even Australian. But basically, his quote, I think it's very pertinent to all of us because it really tells us how we should be going about this thing. So it says, in our choice to be with those who suffer, compassion leads not simply to pity, but to solidarity. Mm-hmm. So, yep, just remember that. Just remember that we have to move forward. We have to move forward together. So, have a great Reconciliation Week. Just try and think on all of the points that we've touched on today. I hope it's shed light on issues that, for me, I've literally only known about this stuff for a year, and I hope you guys are staying safe. And we'll see you in the weekly PSP. Bye.